Thank you very much, Professor Brian Langille, for being here at Padova University, School of Law. I want to ask you, what are capabilities?
That's a very interesting question. It's also one that's difficult to answer in a short frame. But the basic idea of the capability approach, or capability theory, is that we should focus upon the real capability of human beings to do and be things in the world. So that only makes sense if you compare it to other theories. So it's meant to be a theory that rejects John Rawls's theory that what we ought to focus on is the primary goods, a set of resources that we give to everybody. It also is meant to distinguish itself from utilitarian theories, that is, how things turn out for you. So Rawlsian theory, how you start off, we give everybody an equal share of resources. Utilitarian theory, we try to make people end up in the more or less the same place. So where you start, where you end. Capability is in the middle. It's not where the resources you start with or where you end up. It is the actual freedom you have to be or do things in the world. So it's quite a radical theory in a way from an economic point of view. One of Amartya Sen's, now Sen, S-E-N, the very distinguished economist who won a Nobel Prize. It's a mistake to call him an economist because he's really a political theorist and a philosopher as well as an economist. He is the originator of the idea that we should focus upon capabilities. Later on, a very brilliant woman named Martha Nussbaum took over and worked with Sen and has developed her own approach to the capability idea. So Sen and Nussbaum are the two key players, but it was Sen who introduced this idea about 40 years ago, that political theory is not focusing upon the right thing, that if we're interested in human equality and human dignity, we should focus upon capabilities, not resources, and not outcomes. So that's the basic idea, and there's a lot of difference between Sen and Nussbaum, for example, as to how specific we should be about what capabilities we're talking about. Sen has a very general conception. It's just a general idea of human freedom, real substantive human freedom to be able to live a life that is valuable. Martha Nussbaum is famous for coming up with a very discrete set of 10 central capabilities. And Sen resists this idea. He believes we shouldn't be specific. Nussbaum thinks we have to be specific. This is a contentious point between the two of them. But to go back to the idea that it's a radical theory from an economic point of view, for example, an economist might say, well, someone who needs a wheelchair to move around, we should not give them as many resources as we should give to an able-bodied person, because it's more expensive for them to produce the same amount of goods to have the same impact in the world. Whereas Sen has the exact opposite idea, which is no, they need more resources. In order to have equality of opportunity, real equality of capability, the same capabilities that a person not in a wheelchair has, we have to give them more resources. So it has a lot of very interesting impacts. So it's a change of focus on what's important. And I'll say one more thing. Sen introduced this idea as a radical idea in development theory, in development economics. When Sen started talking this way, the dominant idea was the Washington Consensus, that economic development was to be measured by increase in gross domestic product, GDP. Sen's idea was that that's a mistake. We're focusing on the wrong thing. Development is about improving the lives of real human beings, which means increasing their capability to lead a life we have reason to value. GDP increase may contribute to that or may not, but it's the wrong focus. So we should, in development theory, take this idea of capabilities very seriously. And he and Nussbaum have had a real impact in the international sphere, because we now focus, for example, at the United Nations on human development, not on GDP per capita, but on real human development, measured by it's a way of measuring the real capabilities of people to live longer, healthier, happier, better educated, freer lives. So that's a long answer to a good question. I'm sorry it was so long.